All right, wisdom. So one of the things that we've come to understand in life is that it is unpredictable. It is uncertain. And some of us lately have felt the uncertainty of life in a way that is unprecedented. And at times, people feel like, man, I just feel like roadkill right now because I just keep getting run over like a Mack truck. There's crisis after crisis. And there are problems and challenges that just seem so immense. So we might think James crazy when he writes these words. Bonnie just read them, but I want us to look at them again and go, come on, James, are you for real? Consider it joy, all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials. Now, if you just read that much, you ought to go, I don't think so. I want to sign up for, what else can I sign up for? Other than that kind of joy. I'm facing trials of all kinds, the testing, and I don't really want my faith to be tested. So James is saying something pretty different to us. But he's saying that these things that happen in life, the problems in life, the circumstances that we just wish we weren't involved in, those are the things that test your faith, and that when you endure those things, then you develop perseverance. He said, and perseverance has a purpose, because perseverance must finish its work in you, that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. But then we are cautioned. Because he says, if anyone lacks wisdom, ask God. And God is ready. God's ready to give you that wisdom. But if you're going to ask, you got to believe. Don't doubt. Because those who doubt, James says, it's like being on a boat, and the boat is a-rocking, and the waves are blowing, and the waves are rocking, and the wind is blowing, and you don't be tossed by the wind. He says, that person should not think they'll receive anything from the Lord, for he or she is unstable and double-minded. So what James is saying to us, friends, it's important. It says, being faithful in the small things in life sets the stage for the big challenges that we will face. And as we're faithful in our actions and reactions to life, that's our proving ground. Now, I think a lot of us know that tires go through proving ground. Cars go through proving ground. I mean, you just don't build a car and then stick it out there. It has to be tested. It has to go out to the proving ground. And James says these smaller things in life, those are the proving ground for us. Life is our proving ground. And if and as we live faithfully, the seed of wisdom is planted and nurtured. And one thing I think we all know is that you can live a long life and never grow in wisdom. We can have countless experiences in our life and never learn from them. It's possible to keep making the same poor choice over and over. There are those, perhaps you know one, or perhaps it's been you at one time or another, who keep getting into the relationship with the same guy or the same woman. Different face, different name, same stupid choice over and over. See, wisdom in a sense it says we need to be at war against stupidity. Okay, because stupidity destroys lives. And the stupidity is destroying lives right now. It's at risk of destroying our country, our friends, and our collective future. Now, there's a guy in the scriptures who we are told is the wisest man who ever lived, right? His name was? Thank you, Solomon, right. Now, that was written before Jesus, so we're going to think he was like second. Okay, we're going to put him behind Jesus. Okay, so he was the son of a person we may have heard of, King David, and he inherited the empire when he was a young man. Scholars tell us probably in his teens. And as a teen, then he is over this vast empire, and he is overwhelmed by the challenge that is before him. And I go, yeah, no duh. He's overwhelmed by the responsibilities that are now his. And so God made him an offer. It's nice. God said, you can have anything you want, and I'll give it to you. Now, as I read that, and if you saw the newsletter, I thought, that's like I Dream of a Genie. You pick up the bottle, and out she pops, and says, what would you like, Master? I went back, and because I've linked up, and I saw, I don't remember ever seeing the original one, but she spoke in a foreign language at first. Did anyone follow the link and go watch the original, the first of that? Just Google it. It's so fun. And then finally, Tony says, I just wish you spoke English. And then all of a sudden she starts speaking English. It was really fun, So not only did Tony, he got unlimited wishes, Solomon got one. And so instead of asking for wealth or power or pleasure, Solomon asks God for wisdom. Yeah. Solomon says, give me some wisdom. Give me wisdom, and I will lead this people that you have entrusted me with. Now, that's an extraordinary request and a wise choice, if I may say so myself. And so God says, Solomon, because you didn't ask me for wealth or power or pleasure, the type of things that normally I'm being asked for in people's prayer life, he says, all these things that men pursue and war for all their lives, because you asked for wisdom, I'm not only going to give you wisdom, Solomon, I'm going to give you all these other things in addition to it. And so parenthetically then, men have been asking God for wisdom ever since, with the hopes that God would give them power and wealth and pleasure. So we find that Solomon's wisdom was tested right away. Some of you know the story. 2 women, each have a young baby. And in the night, one of them dies. And so in the morning then, the woman whose child died all of a sudden says, that's my kid. And I was like, no, that's my baby. What are you doing? And so they start having this, I don't know if it's a literal tug of war or whatever, but they're having this tug of war, and no one can say, well, whose baby this is. And so finally it ends up, they say, well, let's take it to Solomon, because supposedly he's wise. So Solomon hears them all. He got 2 women, 2 mothers, 1 baby, and they can't decide. So in his wisdom, Solomon says, well, I know how to fix this. We'll just cut the baby in half. Brilliant choice, right? Well, the woman who was the mother said, no, don't. Just let her have the baby. Well, the other woman had said, sure, that's fine with me. So Solomon right away knew who the mother was, because the mother would never want any harm to come. So Solomon cut straight through to the choice. So I didn't use the app, so I'm going to ask you a question right here. All right? I'd like you to think of the wisest person you've ever known. And I want it to be the person who, if you walked up to them, they would say, hey, Rob. Hey, Bob. Hey, Gene. Okay, so you need to know this person. Oh, there's a follow-up question, so you need to have a person in mind. Okay? Raise your hand if you have somebody in mind, because I'm waiting until everybody's hand goes up. I got cold cuts for lunch, so I can wait. Okay, that's good enough. All right. So here's our little survey I'm going to do, okay? So is this person that you just said, yeah, I've got the wisest person in my mind, are they the richest person that you've ever known? If so, raise your hand. Okay, all right. So we know something. So we know that affluence is not linked to wisdom, okay? All right, so is this wisest person that you've ever known, are they the most educated? Do they have the most degrees, the most pedigreed person that you know? If so, raise your hand. Ooh, our education is, oh, there we go. The educator says, well, of course. I'm picking on the educators. I love you. All right. So what we see is that as you guys discussed earlier with Gina's opening thoughts, education does not equal wisdom as well. Okay, so one more question. Okay. So this wisest person that you know, are they the person you would go to if you're going to go to anybody? Because some of us, we won't go to anybody, we'll just sit and drown in our own agony. Okay. But if you were going to go to anybody, would they be the person that you would go to help you with something, either interpersonally, within yourself, or within a business? Would they be the person that you would go to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, that's what I was hoping. Okay. So what we see is that wisdom is different than knowledge. Wisdom is more than the accumulation of data and information, which you guys did so well. That wisdom gives us the ability to, in a sense, to connect the dots in life. So, that said, Solomon, remember, the wisest man who ever lived, was researching and studying the archives of human history. So when I read that phrase, I'm thinking, anyone watch Game of Thrones here? Remember, they had these massive books that they'd bring out, and they would unfold it, and the book would be like this, this big. And I'm just imagine Solomon reading one of these massive tomes, So he's studying the archives of human history, and he finds an occurrence of wisdom that astonished him. Now that says something, right? It astonished Solomon. See, if I was playing golf, and I played with some 15-year-old kid, and he was really, really good, and I said, boy, you got to keep your eye on this kid because he is going to go places. One day he's going to be famous in golf. You'd say, well, man, you're like a subpar golfer. You can't even play golf. What do you know about judging someone's ability to play golf? But if Tiger Woods played with that young 15-year-old kid, and Tiger Woods said, man, you book it. That young man, that young woman, she or he is going to go on and, they have a great future in golf. You go, yeah, I'm going to watch that person. So if I just said I'm at the wisest person in the world, you might say, well, maybe, maybe not. What was your class rank, Kurt? Okay, won't go there. All right. So Solomon says, I saw wisdom under the sun that astonished me. We would stop and we would pay attention, right? And so this is exactly what he says in Ecclesiastes, a book not many of us cracked lately. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 13, beginning in verse 13, he writes these words. I also saw under the sun this example of wisdom that greatly impressed me. So there's the 15-year-old golfer being impressed by Tiger Woods. Solomon, the wisest of all, says, this example of wisdom impressed me. There was once a small city with only a few people in it, and a powerful king came against it. All right. But nobody remembered the poor man. The story continues. So I said, wisdom, Solomon says, is better than strength, but the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heeded. The quiet words, Solomon says, of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a foolish ruler. So we don't know what took place, but whatever it was made such a huge impression on Solomon. Solomon knew, right, what wisdom and power could accomplish together. He was living proof of wisdom and power. But here was a guy, no title, no position, no wealth, no power, no resources, nothing by way of the world. And Solomon reflects, I once saw wisdom that astonished me. There was a small city with only a few people in it, and a great king rose up against it and built a huge siege work. Now, a siege work was when they surrounded the city and no one could come in and no one could get out. And in that city there was a poor but wise man. And with his wisdom, he set the city free. Here was a man who had nothing working in his favor. His entire world had been turned upside down. We're not even told why the city was valuable, but for whatever reason, some foreign king, some foreign power had come in and built this siege works. Now all of the young men who were raised to defend the city were dead. Women and children were now widows and orphans. There was no one left to bring them hope or freedom. But there was a poor man in a small town with a few people in it who was about to face the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity of his life. So I put myself into that position best as I could, and I thought, well, the first thing he must have had to face was an overwhelming sense of who am I? An overwhelming sense of insignificance. Can you imagine your resume starting, I'm a poor man from a small town with a few people in it? It's like, I didn't come from Naperville. I didn't come from Oak Brook. I didn't come from Chicago. I came from just a small town. I don't know, think Hebron, okay? Small town with very few people in it, very little competition. And in that small little town, I was the poor guy. He wasn't a small fish in a big ocean or a big fish in a small pond. He was a guppy in a puddle, And I'm telling you, when you finally see the life God has created for you, you too might just have that sense of insignificance. And you may well wonder, what in the world is God thinking, selecting me or choosing me? A couple of weeks ago we talked, several of you said afterwards, I used to always be picked last for the team, excuse me. Well, imagine your surprise when all of a sudden you're picked first. Like, what? No. Because all of a sudden now they're depending on you for something, right? They're thinking, oh, well, he's going to make a difference. So all of a sudden, you've got a poor man in a small city without any resources. See, God called Jeremiah. Jeremiah said, I'm too young, Lord. So you call somebody else. Moses said, I can't talk, right? He said, I have a speech impediment. God called Isaiah, and Isaiah said, hey, I'm just unworthy. I am unholy. So every time God encounters a human being, they get a glimpse of the path that God has set before them, and there can be, and often is, this sense of being overwhelmed. Like, me? So think about it this way. What's your vision for your life? If you feel you're completely up to the task, then maybe your vision is too small. If you think you're talented enough, gifted enough, bright enough, intelligent enough to accomplish everything that God is hoping and has set before you, maybe your vision is too small. See that sense of insignificance? We're supposed to trade it in for an understanding of the power of God with one person. So anybody here ever felt insignificant? Oh, we got a few confident ones out there, okay. We know how that's played out, right? We can look good. We can talk the talk. But deep down inside of us, in those quiet moments, what I've heard, and likely you have heard too, is, hey, there are people who are more talented than you, more intelligent than you, and certainly better looking than you. See, there are people out there that have an edge. They've got the advantage over you. And you look in the mirror and you go, how in the world am I ever going to accomplish everything that I want to do, that God's leading me into, of all the things that I feel like being led toward when I'm not everything I need to be? And what we need to know is that no matter how insignificant you've ever felt or how insignificant other people have told you are, when you come into a relationship with the creator of the universe, you begin to tap into that power, the power of one person with God. And that one person with God can do mighty things. If anything, Jesus reminds us that one person fully devoted can save the world. So have you ever even given any thought? What might God want to do in my life? And what would you do? What would you need to step into if you began to hear and see that calling, that direction? Maybe you think, I could never do that. I've had some thoughts, but I could never do that. There was a poor man in a small village whose wisdom was incomprehensible. So dream with me now for a moment, would you? So you've overcome your sense of insignificance. You say, okay, I'm going to believe that one person with God is a majority. I'm going to believe that God can do amazing things through me. I'm going to believe that in spite of all my weaknesses, all my faults, all my shortcomings, all my brokenness, that God is going to do amazing things through me. walk outside, and you go, whoa, oh, these problems, they're huge. There are giants out there, dragons, fire-breathing dragons. And you go, no wonder I thought I was insignificant. Because I'm not only insignificant, but the problems are significant. He's not just a poor man in a small town with a few people in it. He has to go to war against a king. Against a great king who decides to conquer and hold a town for his own. So I believe that for most of us, the moment we begin to live our life with the intention and the purpose God created you, you're likely to find yourself going to war with giants. And you're going to have to slay the dragons. And you're going to have to wonder to yourself, how in the world does God expect me to overcome all of these? I've had conversations. You may have had some as well with people. I've had too many conversations with people of faith who said, well, I believed in God, my faith was sincere, and then those two words, the most destructive words, and then this happened, and then my world fell apart, and then someone I loved died, and then the person I trusted betrayed me, and then this happened, and then that happened. And when you enter into a relationship with God, the and-thens don't end. They're going to keep being there. And then. And in those moments, we have to realize that the only solution to overcoming the and-thens is an overriding commitment to God. And that the only circumstances that will bring you down and keep you down are the ones that are more powerful than your commitment to live the life God has created you to live. He was just a poor man that God used to set his city free. So what could God do with you? And Solomon goes on and he says, well, he was poor. And did I mention he was poor? And by the way, one of the unique characteristics of this man was he was poor. You got it, right. Solomon was probably wondering, how can a poor man accomplish so much? Is wisdom really this powerful? Because the moment I get over my sense of insignificance and I go, okay, God, I believe that you and me, we can do great things together, I'm not going to be terrified by the overwhelming circumstances in life. I'm going to rise above them and have the internal compass to be fueled by courage. But then I go, yeah, but God, it takes stuff to make things happen. I need resources. So this is a word not only to us, but to church in general, to the churches. If only I had enough money for ministry. If only I had enough money to make a real impact on the world. If only Jesus had money, then he could have changed the world. But poor Jesus, he was just broke. So Jesus created this huge movement of dreamers and visionaries and heroes. He created this movement of men and women who are noble and courageous, but he was just so underfunded. He couldn't make it work. See, sometimes we're not the poor man. Sometimes we're simply a beggar with a poverty mentality. Because we think that God's resources are unavailable to us, that the resources have to come first rather than our faith in God. In my life, everything that has actually lasted started with passion. And when things start with love, they endure. But when things start with the resources, it seems to me they're already on shaky ground. God said what? God said to Abraham, leave everything. Go. Come with me this way, to a land you do not know, among a people you do not know, to a future that you do not know. It seems like God says, trust me. Let me be your resource. Jesus looked at a man and said, go sell all your possessions, because he was rich. See, when we moved to seminary, which was right after we got married, right after college, we moved into this very modest place. Betsy says to me, how can we afford this? I said, we can't afford anything. So we didn't have enough money to pay the bills. But we had a belief, we had a conviction that we were where we were supposed to be. See, when you face the great challenges and opportunities of life, you have an overwhelming sense that you lack the resources to get it done, and that's when you need to realize that God has unlimited resources for those who walk with courage, who trust in God, who choose the path of wisdom, which is the mind of Christ. There once was a poor man in a small city who had incredible wisdom, and he saved his city. What will you and God do together?